The wind came down the bitter roots like a curse howling through the pines and snapping branches clean off the trees. Snow whipped sideways so thick it swallowed the world whole. Tobias Callahan's oboe, to the few who still remembered his name, sat alone by the fire, staring at the dying embers, like a man watching his own heartbeat fade. The cabin creaked under the weight of the storm. The log walls moaned. The wind clawed at the door as if trying to rip it clean off its hinges. Toby didn't move. He'd lived up here long enough to know that storms had a language. This one wasn't just wind. It had a voice. It was talking to him oft, cold, relentless. He set down his tin cup of coffee. It had gone cold hours ago. The rifle lay across his knees, polished from habit more than purpose. There hadn't been a living soul within 10 miles of his cabin since Ruth died 3 winters ago. He preferred it that way. Out there the world was mean and crowded. Up here, the only thing meaner than a man was the cold, and at least the cold was honest. He stirred the embers with a poker, the orange glow flaring weakly. Smoke licked the air. The faint smell of pine resin hung in the room. That's when he heard it. Thud. A single heavy knock against the door. He froze. It came again, thud, slow, deliberate, not the random pounding of wind or fallen branch. Every instinct screamed, "Don't move." Nobody climbed this far up the pass in a blizzard unless they were desperate or dangerous. He reached for his rifle. The metal felt cold even by firelight. The wind shrieked outside, shaking the cabin walls. Then came another sound, faint, brittle. A scraping, like something or someone dragging across the porch. Toby's jaw tightened. He'd heard plenty of strange things in the mountains. Coyotes crying, trees breaking under ice, men once or twice trying to steal what wasn't theirs. But this sound, it was too soft for an animal, too human for comfort. He rose from his chair slowly, boots scuffing the floorboards. His breath steamed in front of him. The knocking stopped. Silence pressed against the cabin thick as snow. He counted in his head. 1, 2. Then it came again. Not a knock, a groan. Weak. Human. He hesitated at the door, the rifle barrel glinting in lamplight. His mind said, "Leave it." His gut said otherwise. Toby pulled back the iron latch. The storm exploded through the gap, snow and air so cold it burned. He squinted into the whiteout. At first, nothing. Just the swirling veil of snow. Then a shape. Something small and dark hunched near the steps, half buried. He stepped into the blizzard boots, sinking deep. The cold hit him like a hammer. His coat flapped open, his breath vanishing in the wind. He crouched. The shape was a body, a woman young, frozen half to death. Her hair was stiff with ice, her skin pale as bone. "God Almighty," he muttered. He slung his rifle behind him and lifted her. She was light weightless almost. The door banged shut behind him as he stumbled inside. Snow followed them, spinning through the firelight. He laid her down on the bearskin rug by the hearth. Her lips were cracked, her feet bare and blue, her sides slick with blood, gone black in the cold. Not dead. Not yet. Her chest rose shallowly. Toby knelt beside her, unwrapping the frozen blanket from her shoulders. Her clothes were torn cheap, calico stiff with frost. "Hell," he whispered. She flinched when his hands brushed her arm, a sound escaping her throat, half a whimper, half a warning. "Easy," he murmured. "You're safe here." Her eyes fluttered open, dark, unfocused. "Don't," she rasped. "Please, don't hurt me." Toby drew back instantly. The fear in her voice wasn't new, it was carved deep like scars that never fade. "I ain't gonna hurt you," he said quietly. "You're bleeding." She didn't answer, just curled in on herself, trembling so violently her teeth chattered. He cursed under his breath, threw a kettle of snow on the fire to melt, found an old medical tin bandage's thread, a bottle of whiskey that had outlived better men. He cut her sleeve open carefully with his knife. That's when he saw it, the brand burned into her skin just beneath the collarbone. The letter M seared deep. He froze. "That ain't a wound," he said under his breath. "That's a warning." The girl whimpered. Toby had seen that mark before, years back on a girl they'd pulled out of the Bitterroot River. It meant ownership. A brothel brand. The kind no lawman cared to erase. He poured whiskey over the wound. She gasped, arching away from him. "Hold still," he said, voice steady though his hands shook. "You move, you die." Her body tensed, but she didn't fight. He worked fast, cleaning, wrapping, whispering curses into the firelight. By the time he finished, sweat had beaded on his forehead despite the cold. She was still shaking. Her breathing shallow, but even. He sat back on his heels, staring at her. The storm pounded outside like fists on the walls, but in the cabin there was only the crackle of the fire and her faint, uneven breaths. He hadn't heard another voice in 3 winters. Now this. Toby rubbed his face with his hands. He could leave her come morning. Once the storm passed, he'd haul her down to the valley. Let the law, or whatever passed for it, take her. But something in her look stopped that thought cold. She wasn't just lost. She was running from something far worse than snow. He poured himself a shot of whiskey, swallowed it, and muttered, "Damn fool." The fire popped. Her fingers twitched. He took off his coat and laid it over her. Outside the wind howled again, but softer this time, almost like it was watching. Toby leaned his rifle against the wall, sat back in the old chair. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone, and that scared him more than the storm. He looked at her once more, pale and still beside the fire. Whoever she was, she'd brought something with her. Trouble, pain, maybe even death. But the mountain had taken everything else from him already. What more could it steal? The fire dimmed to a faint glow. She stirred in her sleep, mumbling something in a language he didn't know. He leaned closer. Her voice was thin, but clear enough to catch one word: running. He exhaled slowly. "Yeah," he murmured. "Aren't we all?" Outside, thunder rolled deep across the range. A wolf howled distant, but near enough to feel. Toby reached for more firewood. The storm wasn't letting up, and he had a bad feeling neither would whatever followed her here. As he tossed a log into the fire, sparks leapt toward the roof beams, lighting the room in sharp flashes. Her eyes flickered open for a brief second, glazed with fever. "Who are you?" she whispered. He paused. "Just a man trying to stay warm." Her eyes drifted shut again. "They'll come," she murmured. "He'll come." Toby frowned. "Who?" But she was gone again, swallowed by exhaustion. He sat there for a long while, listening to the storm beat its fists against the world. The fire hissed. The wind screamed. Then through the chaos, he heard it again, the faintest sound. Not the storm this time. Not the fire. Hoofbeats. Far off, muffled by snow, but real. He looked toward the window, frost glinting like knives on the glass. "Christ," he muttered. "Ain't no peace left up here." He stood checking the rifle and stared into the darkness beyond the frozen pane. The mountain was no longer empty. And whatever was climbing toward him through the storm, it wasn't coming to ask for shelter. That ain't a wound, that's a warning. Toby stood over the girl as the fire hissed behind him. His rifle leaned against the wall where he could reach it in half a breath. The girl Naya she'd murmured in her fevered sleep lay still under his coat, her breath thin, rattling like dry leaves in the wind. The cabin had gone quiet after the first storm died down, but something hung in the air now. Not the cold, not fear. Something heavier, like fate itself, had stepped into the room and sat down beside the fire. Toby poured what little clean water he had into a tin bowl. The kettle above the fire hissed steam, curling upward. He dipped a cloth, wrung it out, and moved to the girl. Her dress was stiff, crusted with frozen blood. The side wound was bad, ragged, shallow, but dirty. He needed to get to it. Fast. He reached for his hunting knife, slow and deliberate. Gotta cut away the fabric. He muttered more to himself than to her. The knife hissed through cloth like slicing wet bark. When the dress fell away from her collarbone, Toby stopped. There it was. The scar was unmistakable. A dark brand burned into her skin, just under her left clavicle. The letter M seared into flesh by iron, the edges puckered and glossy. He stared at it, felt his stomach twist. He'd seen that mark once before, maybe 7 years back. A girl pulled from the Bitterroot River, cold and dead, carried the same symbol. The talk then was that it belonged to a brothel ring out of Helena. The Magpie Nest, they called it. A place that didn't care whether a girl came by choice or chain. That ain't a wound, he said aloud, voice low. That's a warning. Naya stirred at the sound. Her eyes opened, fever-glazed and dark as pitch. When she saw the knife in his hand, she jerked away from him, a raw sound catching in her throat. Don't, she gasped. Please. Toby dropped the blade to the floor. Immediately, hands up. I ain't gonna hurt you, he said slowly, clearly. I'm trying to clean the wound. Her hands shook as she tried to cover herself with trembling fingers. Just finish it, she whispered. Whatever you're gonna do, just make it quick. His face went still. She wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid of him, of men like him. No one's finishing anything, he said flatly. You're not a thing. You're not theirs anymore. She blinked slowly, as if his words didn't register. I'm gonna touch your side, he said. That's it. If you want me to stop, just say it. She didn't speak, but she didn't move either. He worked silently, cleaning the wound with hot water and pine salve. She flinched, but didn't scream. Her jaw clenched like she'd learned a long time ago not to make noise. When he wrapped the bandage tight around her ribs, he saw the rest of it, bruises up her back, yellow and purple, and new ones forming near old. Some were in the shape of fists, others weren't so clear. All of them told the same story. Toby's hands shook when he tied the linen off. He stepped away back to the fire, stoking the flame higher. The warmth rushed back into the room, though it couldn't touch the chill in his bones. She watched him, barely able to keep her eyes open. You should have left me, she whispered. Toby didn't turn. Didn't feel right. I would have frozen, she said. It would have been easier. Maybe, he said, tossing more wood into the fire. But the mountain don't get to decide who lives and dies. Not tonight. Silence sat between them. Then a whisper. What's your name? He glanced back. Toby. She nodded faintly. Naya. He nodded once. No further questions. No explanations. She passed out again before the sun rose. The next morning he stood on the porch, snow crunching underfoot. The sky had cleared, but the cold had teeth sharper than any wolf. Toby squinted toward the south trail, something gnawing at the back of his mind. Then he saw it faint, almost lost beneath the snow, a single set of hoof prints, fresh. He followed them halfway down the ridge, until he saw the place where the rider had stopped, dismounted, stood looking toward his cabin, then turned back. Whoever it was hadn't wanted to be seen, but they sure as hell wanted to see. He cursed and hustled back uphill. Inside, Naya still slept. Her fever held steady, no worse. He kept the fire roaring, kept the rifle close. By noon, she stirred. Her voice came hoarse but clear. Someone's coming. He paused, knife in hand, prepping jerky. How do you know they always come? She pushed herself up slowly, wincing, gripping the edge of the cot. I don't remember much, she said. I ran when the marshal came to collect me for a private client. I stabbed him. Don't think I killed him. Doesn't matter. They'll hunt me down for what I did, not for what they did. Toby nodded once. He'd seen enough of the world to know how justice worked. Name Marshal Silas Grady, she whispered. He branded us, ran the nest like a cattle yard. Toby exhaled slow. That name he recognized, too. Grady wasn't a marshal so much as a butcher with a badge. Then he'll be back, Toby said, and he'll bring more. Naya met his eyes. You should leave me. I won't blame you. I ain't planning on dying in this cabin, he replied. But I sure as hell ain't planning on letting him take you either. She looked away, voice low. You don't know what I've done. Toby's jaw clenched. Don't matter. I seen what's been done to you. The cabin creaked again. The wind picked up outside, scraping the walls like claws. Toby moved to the rifle, checked the chamber. Then he muttered to himself, if someone finds her here, she's dead. If they find me with her, so am I. The sun dropped behind the ridge. They were running out of daylight. And somewhere out there in the silence of the forest, someone was already watching. If she dies here, the storm won't be what killed her. The fever hit her hard on the second night. Toby knew the signs, the flush on her cheeks that wasn't from the fire, the sweat slicking her hairline despite the freezing air, the way her eyes fluttered unfocused, as if she were watching something only she could see. He'd seen it before, first in Ruth during that final winter, then in the livestock when infection set in. Fever didn't burn for nothing. It burned when something inside was losing the fight. He sat beside Naya, her skin glowing with heat, her breath fast and shallow. Her lips moved, but the words were a whisper lost to the crackle of the fire. Stay with me, he murmured, dabbing her forehead with a wet cloth. Her face jerked toward his touch like a wounded animal. Don't take her now, he muttered to no one, to the mountain maybe, or the god he hadn't spoken to in years. Not after she made it this far. He stoked the fire higher, the flames throwing long shadows on the log walls. The storm outside had calmed, but inside another storm raged beneath her skin. He didn't sleep. Instead, he moved around the cabin in slow, deliberate steps. Water, herbs, whiskey. He crushed pine needles with his boot heel, then wrapped them in linen soaked with hot snowmelt and placed it against her side. The wound oozed, not blood pus. Infection had taken root. The dressing stuck to her skin like tar. When he peeled it back, she groaned, and her hand twitched toward her ribs. Toby cursed under his breath. He would need to lance it. He poured whiskey over his knife, then again over her wound. She hissed, even in unconsciousness. He set the blade and paused. You'll hate me for this, he whispered, but I ain't gonna let you die, not like this. He pressed the tip in. Her eyes flew open. A ragged scream tore from her chest, not loud, not sharp, but deep, like it came from years buried beneath her skin. Her hand grabbed blindly for something, anything, fingers locking around his wrist. "Shh," he said, holding her down gently. Almost done. She breathed in quick, hot gasps, her fingernails biting into his arm. But she didn't fight. Not fully. He made the cut a clean slice and the pus flowed. Hot, thick, and foul. He pressed the cloth down, flushing it with more snowmelt. His hands steady, even as his heart pounded. "You're tougher than you look," he murmured. "Meaner, too." She groaned something in response, maybe a word, maybe a name. As he finished wrapping the new dressing tight, he noticed her other arm exposed just beneath the rolled-up sleeve of his old flannel. Bruises dotted her wrist, and a mark half-healed across her forearm. Rope burn, deep. He paused, staring at it. Whoever had done this hadn't just owned her. They'd punished her. His chest tightened. He'd known men like that. Men who called themselves lawmen, ranchers, businessmen. All of them wore respectability, like a cloak, and hid their rot underneath. He put her arm gently down, then stood, hands shaking. Not from the cold. Toby walked to the window. The snow had slowed. The moon shone silver on the treetops. Somewhere out there, Grady was coming. And from the look of her, she wouldn't survive another few nights, not without help. His gut twisted. "If she dies here," he said quietly, "the storm won't be what killed her." He looked to the far edge of the valley where the trees darkened. Past that was where Auntie Magpie lived, a half-day's walk, if the snow was shallow and his boots held. He hadn't seen the old Salish woman in years. She'd helped Ruth birth their son. Buried him, too, 3 months later. Toby clenched his jaw. He'd sworn never to step near that place again. Not because he blamed her, but because she remembered him from when he still believed in something. He looked at Naya again. He no longer had the luxury of vows. He moved quickly, pulling together the sled, loading it with kindling blankets, a small iron pot of soup, and the best of what dried food he had left. He wrapped Naya tight in every piece of wool and flannel he could find. When he lifted her, she didn't stir. Her skin was fire against his chest. He opened the door, and the cold slapped him across the face. Snow crunched beneath his boots. The trees loomed silent, holding their breath. Every step forward felt like dragging his past through the present, but he didn't stop. Not this time. They made it to the foot of the ridge just as the sun rose behind the peaks. Faint smoke curled from a chimney not far off. He'd made it to her place. He pounded on the door with the side of his fist. It creaked open slowly, and a face lined with more years than winter could count stared out. "Tobias Callahan," Auntie Magpie said. "I figured you'd only come back when death was chasing you." He nodded, his voice gravel. "It ain't me it's chasing this time." Her eyes fell on the bundle in his arms. Her expression hardened. She stepped aside. "Bring her in," she said. "But know this, whatever follows her might not stop at your door." "I know," he said. He stepped inside. And behind him in the woods, a pair of distant eyes watched, hidden in shadow, waiting. If someone finds her here, she's dead. If they find me with her, so am I. Toby had only slept in snatches over the past 2 days, and what little rest he found was fitful and strange. He'd carried the girl into Auntie Magpie's cabin just after sunrise. The elder woman, calm as ever, set to work the moment the door shut behind them. Now Toby sat outside the old woman's hut on a short-cut stump, staring into the forest. Snow fell again, not thick like before, but steady, slow, and quiet, like the mountain was trying to smother everything beneath its white silence. Inside, he could hear the murmurs of Magpie's chants, the creak of her floorboards, and the occasional hiss of boiled water. Naya hadn't stirred since he'd brought her in. Toby's rifle rested across his lap, his boots buried halfway into the snow. He'd tracked deer, coyotes, even men through this pass. But the prints he saw on the way down, half-covered, fast-moving, deliberate, weren't random. Someone had been watching his cabin. He lit a piece of dried bark and sucked in smoke, letting the cold air bite his cheeks while his lungs burned. Footsteps broke the silence behind him. Still stubborn as a mule, I see, came a voice, rough and familiar. Toby turned, expression unreadable. Boone. Luther Boone stood just beyond the tree line, wrapped in a tattered buffalo coat, snow clinging to the cuffs. His grizzled beard had picked up more gray since they last spoke, maybe 2 years, maybe more. A carbine hung on his shoulder, his boots heavy with frost. "You look like hell," Boone said, stepping closer. "You smell like it," Toby replied, flicking ash off his bark. "What brings you all the way up here?" Boone's eyes narrowed. "Smoke. Saw it curling off your cabin. Then saw someone else's tracks that didn't belong to you. Or her." Toby didn't react, but inside something clenched. Boone crouched, elbows on his knees. "She yours?" Toby shook his head once. "Just someone who needed help." Boone gave him a look. "This ain't a territory where folks get saved for nothing." "I didn't say it was for nothing. Didn't have to." They sat in silence for a moment, snow landing on their shoulders like falling time. "She's branded," Boone said finally. "Saw it when I peeked in." The Toby didn't move. "I know. Marshall Grady's brand." Toby's jaw flexed. "I know." Boone rubbed his gloved hands together. "You realize what happens if that son of a bitch finds her here?" Toby looked straight ahead. "If someone finds her here, she's dead. If they find me with her, so am I." Boone snorted. "Ain't wrong." Inside, a door creaked. Auntie Magpie stepped out onto the porch, a fur shawl wrapped over her shoulders. Her long gray braid was damp with snow. "She's stable," the old woman said. "For now. Fever's broken." Toby stood. "Will she wake when she's ready?" Magpie answered. "But you should be more worried about what wakes up with her." He frowned. "What do you mean?" Magpie looked out at the woods, her eyes narrowing. "A girl don't get a mark like that without leaving blood behind her. And blood calls back what it spilled." "She stabbed Grady," Toby said. "Claims he was taking her to a private buyer. She ran." "Did she say who the buyer was?" Magpie asked. Toby shook his head. "Didn't ask. You should." Boone stood now, restless. "I passed 3 men on horseback near the South Fork. Not locals. One had a long rifle and the other 2 rode tight formation style. They weren't hunting elk." "Grady's men," Toby muttered. Maybe bounty hunters. Either way," Magpie said, "they'll be here before long." Toby turned back toward the cabin. "I'll take her back to my place. Hold them off if I have to." Magpie raised a wrinkled hand. "You won't hold them off alone." Boone grunted. "He won't be alone." Toby glanced at him. Boone rolled his eyes. "Don't look so surprised. I may be old and half drunk most days, but I hate Grady more than I hate the cold. That bastard burned down half the lower valley last year chasing a Cherokee boy. Never found him. Just left ashes and dead goats behind." Toby gave a small nod. "Then we prepare." Magpie stepped forward, pressing something into Toby's hand. A piece of cloth. Inside it dried sage black salt and a carved wooden raven. For her, Magpie said, not to protect her body, to protect her spirit. It's been broken too many times already. Toby pocketed it. Thank you. You'll owe me later, she said, turning back inside. If you live. They left before midday, Naya still unconscious but breathing strong. Toby tied her securely into a makeshift sled, while Boone scouted ahead. The trail back to the cabin was slick, narrowed from fresh snowfall, but they made decent time. When they reached the rise overlooking the homestead, Boone crouched. Toby followed his gaze. A fire was burning. Not in the fireplace. Out front. In the open. Someone had left a message torched a pile of old wood and pine branches right on the path. A threat. A warning. Toby's eyes narrowed. They were here, Boone said. Toby stared down at the blackened remains. They'll be back. Boone looked at him. You sure you want to go through with this? Ubai's voice was flat. I didn't pull her out of the snow just to let some bastard drag her back into hell. Boone smiled faintly. Knew I liked you for a reason. They moved fast. Toby carried Naya inside and set her near the hearth. Boone helped board the windows, stack wood, and check firing angles through the narrow slits in the logs. By nightfall, the cabin looked less like a home and more like a fortress. As Toby lit the lantern and set his rifle down beside the bed, Naya stirred, her voice weak but clear. He's coming. Toby moved to her side. We know. She reached for his hand, her eyes still fogged with exhaustion and memory. Don't let him take me. I won't, he said. She blinked. You don't know what he'll do. Toby leaned closer. Doesn't matter. I've seen what men like him do, and I've got a bullet with his name on it. Outside, the wind picked up again, and in the distance beneath the trees, a faint glow flickered in the snow, the orange glint of torches far too close for comfort. Blood leaves a trail, but shame leaves a scent wolves never forget. Naya sat wrapped in wool and firelight, her eyes flickering like the flames themselves. The fever had broken, but her skin was still pale, lips dry. Her breath came easier now, but each inhale looked like it cost her. Toby sat nearby, cleaning his rifle, not speaking unless she did. Boone paced the far end of the cabin like a caged wolf, looking out the window every few minutes, listening for hoofbeats that hadn't come yet. Outside, the mountain exhaled snow through the trees, gentle now quiet. But inside, tension hung like smoke. They'll come at night, Boone muttered. That's what I'd do. They already came once, Toby said. Lit a warning fire out front. They're not just looking, they're enjoying it. They always do, Naya said softly. Her voice silenced the room. Even the fire seemed to still. She looked down at her hands, the bandages on her ribs. Grady likes when we're scared. He feeds off it. He wants you to run or break or beg. Makes him feel like he's God. Boone snorted. Well, let's see how divine he feels with a bullet in his spine. Naya didn't smile. Toby stood wiping his hands on a cloth. You're strong enough to ride, Naya nodded, though it was a lie. She'd been through worse. She could survive a saddle. Then we go back to Magpie, Toby said. We need answers. Maybe even a plan. Boone frowned. We just left. And we're going back, Toby said. We're not gonna win this with bullets alone. They rode single file, wrapped tight in furs. The wind had died, but a hush hung in the trees, as if the mountain itself was waiting. Naya rode with Toby, her arms around his waist. her head against his back. She hated how much comfort she took in that warmth. Magpie's cabin came into view as the last light drained from the sky. The old woman was already outside, hands folded, eyes fixed on them, like she'd known they were coming before they did. "You brought her back," she said. "She needs to know," Toby said. "So do I." Magpie nodded and turned without another word. Inside the cabin smelled of smoke, pine sap, and old leather. Magpie moved slowly, but with purpose. She pointed to a seat by the fire for Naya, then poured tea from a black kettle into mismatched mugs. "She knows what follows," her magpie said, not looking up. "But she doesn't know what's inside her." Naya frowned. "What does that mean?" Magpie sat across from her. "You think you're just running from a man, from a place, from pain. But you're also running from what you carry." Naya looked away. "That mark on your chest," Magpie said, "it's not just a scar. It's a door. And it's still open." Naya shook her head. "I didn't choose it." "No one chooses the chain," Magpie said. "But once it's broken, you have to decide what to do with the weight it left. I just want to be free. Then you need to speak the truth. Not just to them. To yourself." Toby watched all this in silence, arms crossed, leaning near the hearth. Magpie turned her gaze on him. "And you? Still think you can fight what's coming with bullets and boards?" Toby didn't answer. "You've faced storms before, Mountain Man, but not one that started in someone else's bones." She reached into a carved wooden box and pulled out a cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside, feathers ash and red ochre. She handed it to Naya. "You need to finish what you started." Naya stared at the items. "I started nothing." "You drew blood," Magpie said, "and now blood follows you. If you don't meet it, it'll bury you. And him too." Naya's voice cracked. "I just wanted to stop him." Magpie's voice softened. "You did. But now you have to end him." Silence again. Boone shifted near the doorway. "We gonna let fate do the talking? Are we still allowed to shoot that bastard in the teeth?" Magpie smiled faintly. "You'll get your chance, Hunter." She stood slowly, moving to a small chest near the back of the cabin. From it, she pulled a long cloth and unrolled it across the table. Inside was an old revolver. Not fancy, not new, but lovingly kept. Engraved along the barrel was a word in Salish. Magpie looked at Naya. "This was my mother's. She used it to keep white men from stealing our land. Now it's yours." Naya's hands trembled as she picked it up. Toby stepped forward. "She's not ready. She doesn't have to be ready," Magpie said. "She has to be willing." Naya met Toby's eyes. "I'm not afraid of dying anymore. I'm afraid of going back." He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. She turned back to Magpie. "Tell me what to do." Magpie reached out and placed her fingers gently on Naya's forehead, just above the scarred brand. "Remember this," she whispered. "Blood leaves a trail, but shame leaves a scent wolves never forget. You have to stop running, stand, face it, or it'll follow you your whole life." Naya swallowed hard, her jaw set. They rode back before dawn, the revolver tucked in Naya's coat, the charm bag in her pocket. Magpie had given them more than weapons. She'd given them something closer to clarity. A map not of where to go, but why. Back at the cabin, Boone had already reset the perimeter. Toby reinforced the shutters. Naya rested against the fire, holding the revolver in her lap like a sleeping dog. Night crept in again. But something was different now. They weren't waiting to run. They were waiting to end it. In the distance, a lone crow called once from the treetops. Then silence. Then hoofbeats. Slow, steady, purposeful. That smoke ain't from no hearth. It's from riders burnin' their way north. The morning broke hard and brittle, the kind that cracked tree limbs and froze breath to beards before a man had time to curse the cold. Toby was already outside, boots planted in a foot of snow, splitting logs like the world wasn't about to come undone. Naya stood behind the frost-glazed window, wrapped in one of Ruth's old shawls. Her fingers clutched the revolver Magpie had given her. She hadn't slept. She couldn't. Not with the weight of what was coming pressing down on her lungs like a wet tarp. The cabin had changed. It no longer felt like a place to survive the cold. It felt like a place waiting to be stormed. The windows were barricaded with furniture and logs. Buckets of snowmelt stood in every corner just in case fire found them, before bullets did. Boone trudged up from the edge of the tree line, breath steaming in thick clouds. His carbine was slung across his back, his mood as dark as the tracks he'd found. Toby stopped chopping. "What did you see?" Boone didn't answer right away. He just pointed toward the southern hills. It took a moment for Tobe to see it. A thread of smoke rising in a thin, deliberate line. Too black, too fast, too unnatural. "That smoke ain't from no hearth," Boone said grimly. "It's from riders burnin' their way north." Toby cursed under his breath. "They're close." Boone nodded. "Closer than we thought. Maybe 5-6 miles out. Riding hard. Not bothering to hide their trail anymore." Naya opened the door, stepping out onto the porch. Her face was pale but set, her eyes hard. "It's him," she said. "He wants us to see him coming." "Why?" Boone asked. "Why the spectacle?" "Because it's not just about dragging me back," she said. "It's about making a point." Toby looked at her. "To who?" "To every other girl who thinks about running." Boone spit into the snow. "Goddamn coward. Wants to be judge, jury, and butcher." "We need to prepare," Toby said. "They'll be here before sundown." He turned and barked out orders. Boone reinforced the east wall. "If they try to circle around, they'll come through that pine hollow." "Naya." "I'm not hiding again," she said, stepping forward. "I wasn't going to ask you to," he replied calmly, "but I need you to help me set the traps. If we can thin them before they get close, we stand a chance." They moved fast, muscle memory taking over. Toby and Boone laid out bear traps beneath shallow snow near the front path and dug shallow ditches along the north approach, filling them with broken glass and jagged nails. Naya helped pack fireglass vials, Magpie's invention, filled with pitch-powdered saltpeter and broken coal. If thrown into flame, they'd explode with a deafening crack and bright blue light, enough to blind or scatter a horse. By noon, the wind shifted, and with it came a scent Naya knew too well. Charred pine, wet leather, smoke tainted with ash and arrogance. She froze. "He's close," she whispered. "I can feel it." Toby glanced at her, his face unreadable. "You sure I've smelled that stench too many nights to forget." They moved back into the cabin as the afternoon sun bled orange across the snow. Boone took the high window perch rifle at the ready. Toby paced the main room like a caged mountain lion, checking ammunition, testing lines of sight. Naya sat near the fire, cleaning the revolver over and over, as if wiping the iron could erase the years it took from her. "I used to dream about killing him," she said suddenly. Toby looked over. "Grady." She nodded. "When I was locked in that basement, chained to a wall like livestock, I'd close my eyes and picture it shooting him, watching him bleed. Boone grunted. You'll get your chance. No, she said softly. I don't want revenge anymore. Toby raised a brow. Then why fight? Because I want to end it, she said. Not for me. For the others. The girl's still down there. Still hoping someone comes. Boone looked at her now with something like respect. Hell of a reason to pull a trigger. The cabin fell silent for a long stretch. Then hoofbeats. Far off, but steady. Like a slow, deliberate drumbeat against the snow-packed earth. Toby moved to the window. In the fading light, he saw the silhouettes. First riders cresting the ridge like wraiths. 5 of them. One rode ahead of the other's thick frame buffalo coat and a silver badge catching the last glint of sunlight. Marshal Silas Grady. Toby's grip tightened on his rifle. They'll be on us in 20 minutes, Boone said. Toby turned to Naya. You still want to stay on this side of the line? She stood, slipped the revolver into her belt and nodded. I was born on the wrong side of the line. Time I stepped over it. They took their positions. Toby at the front door, Boone at the window. Naya crouched behind the overturned table, her hands steady despite the tremble in her chest. The hoofbeats grew louder. The sun dipped below the hills, and the cold returned like a drawn knife. Outside, Grady's voice rang out confident and cruel. Evening, folks. Toby didn't move. We know she's in there, Grady called. We're not here to argue. You hand her over, and we all ride away, warm and alive. Naya's hand twitched toward her revolver. You don't, Grady continued, and I'll burn that shack to cinders. Won't even blink. Boone whispered, You want me to shoot him now? Toby exhaled slowly. Not yet. Grady stepped closer. I ain't gonna ask again, he barked. The girl's got a mark on her shoulder and blood on her hands. You hide her, you're no better than the filth she is. That's when Naya stood. She didn't open the door. She didn't shout. She just said loud enough to carry, I'd rather burn with them, than crawl back to you. The silence that followed was sharp. Toby nodded once, his voice low. That's it then. Boone grinned without humor. Now we give 'em hell. Outside, the riders spread out. Inside, the cabin held its breath. And from the hills, the snow began to fall again, soft at first, then heavy, like the mountain was watching. This ain't a home no more, it's a battleground. The first bullet cracked through the cabin wall just after dusk, splintering pine, and sending a shelf of tin cups crashing to the floor. Boone didn't flinch. Toby ducked instinctively, dragging Naya behind the overturned table in one fluid move. The air inside filled with dust smoke and tension so tight it hummed. Outside, silence followed the shot, too long, too quiet. They're testing us, Boone muttered, eye to the window slit. Seeing who shoots back first. Toby crouched near the front door, rifle ready. We don't give 'em a reason until they're close. Naya sat against the wall, revolver tight in her hands, breath shallow. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears, but her hands were steady. She wasn't that girl from the cellar anymore. Not the one who begged quietly in the dark. Not tonight. Another shot rang out. This one hit the stove, ricocheting with a metallic ping. Boone snapped his carbine to his shoulder and returned fire. The pop of the rifle echoed through the cabin and across the frozen woods. A sharp cry came from outside. Hit one, Boone said flatly. Think I got his arm. Good, Toby growled. 4 left. A shout came from the tree line. Grady's voice. Thought you boys were smarter than this. Toby rose just enough to peek over the windowsill. The marshal stood behind a half-frozen log pile, his buffalo coat glowing orange from the firelight of a burning torch someone had staked into the snow. "Last chance," Grady shouted. "I'll give you till this torch burns out. Then we're coming in." Toby lowered back down. "That torch'll last maybe 20 minutes. "More than enough time to kill us," Boone replied. "We got any surprises left?" Toby reached under the floorboards and pulled out a glass vial swirled with tar-black pitch and powdered coal. "Magpie's fireglass." He handed it to Naya. "You still want in?" She met his eyes. "I was in the moment I knocked on your door." He nodded. "When they move, you throw that at the pine brush to the left. It'll light the whole trail up." She took it, fingers curled around the fragile glass like it was purpose itself. A beat of silence passed, long and heavy. Toby looked around the cabin, once filled with peace, now scarred and fortified. "This ain't a home no more, it's a battleground." They all knew it. Another round slammed into the front wall, cracking the wood just above Naya's head. "Time's up," Grady roared. Boots crunched in the snow, horses snorted. Then the full weight of the siege began. Gunfire burst from 3 sides. Bullets tore through walls, shattered glass, punched through Boone's lookout window. He rolled aside just in time, cursing. Naya threw the fireglass. It arced through the air like a comet, hit the pine brush and exploded. A roar of flame lit the trees blue and orange. Screams followed. Boone fired through the flames, his rifle barking again and again. Toby pushed the table up as cover and fired low toward the base of the door where shadows moved fast. A man cried out, stumbled backward. One down. Smoke filled the cabin, now gunpowder burning pine sweat. "They're trying to circle the back," Boone yelled. Toby motioned to Naya. "Stay low." He kicked open the rear trap door, rolled out into the snow behind the cabin. His boots hit cold earth just as 2 riders came into view, flanking wide. He fired. One fell. The other scattered back into the trees. From inside the cabin, more gunfire. Boone had taken a hit, a graze along the temple, blood dripping into his eye. "I'm fine," he grunted, aiming again. "Better shot with one eye anyway." Another crash, this time from the roof. Naya looked up just in time to see a dark shape land on the cabin, moving fast. One of Grady's men had climbed the back and was trying to drop down the chimney. Without thinking, she grabbed the iron poker from the fireplace and jammed it upward. Sparks flew as iron met flesh. A scream rang out from above, followed by a heavy thud outside. "Good shot," Boone muttered. Toby stumbled back inside, snow crusted on his coat, eyes scanning the room. "You all right?" Naya nodded. "They're thinning." "Grady ain't," Toby said. "He's waiting." Another silence fell, the gunfire easing. Just the crackling of the brush fire outside and the whimper of a dying horse somewhere beyond the tree line. Then Grady's voice again. "Closer now. You think this ends with you? You think killing me changes anything?" He was moving forward slowly, boots crunching across the scorched snow. "You're protecting a murderer," he called, "a whore with blood on her hands." Toby stepped into the doorway, rifle raised. "She's more decent than you'll ever be." "You think you know what she is," Grady shouted. "I branded that little bitch myself, watched her scream. I own her pain." Naya stood behind Toby, shaking, but not with fear, with fury. She stepped forward. "You don't own a damn thing." Grady turned toward the voice just in time for Boone to take the shot. It hit Grady's side, spinning him halfway around. He dropped to one knee, snarling, but he didn't fall. Stubborn son of a Boone grunted, reloading. Grady raised his pistol and fired blindly toward the cabin. A shot rang out. Naya gasped. Toby turned, blood streaked across her sleeve. Not deep, but it was enough. He caught her before she fell. Boone fired again. Missed. Grady retreated into the trees, limping hard, bleeding. The rest of his men were dead or dying in the snow. Silence again. Toby held Naya close, pressing cloth to the wound. "You're all right. You're all right." She smiled weakly. "Still here." Boone staggered over, gripping his shoulder. "He's not done. He'll come again." Toby looked down at the blood on his hands. "No," he said. "Next time we go to him. You only survive a man like Grady by making sure he doesn't." They buried the last of Grady's men before sunrise. Shallow graves. No prayers. Just snow and dirt and silence. Naya leaned on Boone as she limped back into the cabin, her arms stiff and wrapped tight with fresh bandages. The bullet hadn't gone deep, but it hurt like hell. Worse than the pain, though, was the knowledge that Grady had walked away. Wounded, sure, but alive. Toby stood at the window, staring south where the trees thickened and the trail dropped out of sight. "He's gone to regroup," Boone said, dropping into a chair. "He'll come back with more. Men who don't ask questions, who don't miss." Toby didn't look at him. "We can't wait for that." "You thinking what I think you're thinking?" Boone asked. Toby finally turned eyes dark. "I'm thinking we take the fight to him." Naya looked up. "You want to ride south? I want to end this before he rebuilds," Toby said. "He's hurt, bleeding. Probably thinks we'll hole up and pray." Boone rubbed his jaw. "Hell, I didn't even think you had it in you." Toby walked to the table, unrolling a rough map of the territory. "Grady's base camp is down near Eagle's Bend. Private land. Old logging station he took over after the war. Fortified, but not untouchable." Naya stepped forward, wincing with each move. "It's not just a hideout. He keeps girls there. Others like me. Some younger." Boone looked up. "Still there," she nodded. "If we don't go now, they'll disappear." Silence passed over the room like a cloud. Toby tapped the map. "We cut through Deer Pass. 2 days if we ride hard." Quiet. Boone shook his head. "Too risky. Snow's thick up that way. We don't have time for the main roads. He'll have watchers," Toby said. "We do this fast and mean, in and out." Naya leaned on the table. "If we're going in, I'm going with you." "You're hurt," Toby said. "I'm not dead," she shot back. He studied her for a beat, then nodded. Boone stood. "Well, I was planning on dying up here anyway. Might as well make it useful." That night they packed light. Rifles, extra ammunition, Magpie's charms. Boone tied his flask to the saddle horn and muttered prayers he hadn't used since his army days. Toby loaded Naya's revolver himself, hands steady, words few. At dawn, the three of them rode out beneath a low gray sky. The ride through Deer Pass was brutal. The wind howled like it had a name and wanted theirs. Ice crusted the edges of every rock and their horses fought every step. But they pressed on. By the second night, they made camp beneath a frozen overhang, the fire small and the mood smaller. Toby kept watch while Boone slept, sitting up his rifle across his lap. Naya stared into the flames, her eyes unreadable. "You all right?" Toby asked. She nodded slowly. "Just thinking." "About what?" She hesitated. "What if we lose?" Toby didn't answer right away. Then he said, "We won't. But if we do..." He cut her off. "You only survive a man like Grady by making sure he doesn't." Her eyes met his. "I don't want to run anymore." "Then we don't." They rode at first light. By midday, they reached the outer edge of Eagle's Bend. Trees thinned into brush, and the air smelled like wet ash and horse sweat. In the distance, barely visible through the trees, rose the old logging camp, now a compound. Guard towers, barbed wire, 2 cabins, a watch post, and beyond that, a barn. That's where he keeps them, Naya said, pointing. Toby studied the layout. We go in at dusk. Boone, you cover the west tower. Naya and I will go through the barn. Boone raised an eyebrow. A little frontal for my taste. Toby looked at him. They won't expect it. Not now. Not with 3 people. Boone sighed. Suicidal plans always sound clever when you say them like that. They waited until the light faded and the cold settled in thick. Then they moved. Boone broke west, his rifle wrapped in canvas. Naya and Toby circled downwind, keeping low through brush and rock. They reached the fence at the back of the barn. Toby cut through the wire and pushed her ahead. Inside the barn was quiet. Dark. Then soft crying. Movement. A girl no older than 14 chained near a stall. 2 more in the loft. Naya moved to her knees. It's okay. We're getting you out. Then footsteps. Toby turned, rifle raised. A guard stepped in, startled. Toby fired once. The man dropped. The shot echoed. Lights burst on across the camp. Shouts rang out. Alarm bells clanged. Boone's rifle cracked in the distance. 1 tower down. Toby moved fast, cutting chains. Get them out! Now Grady's voice bellowed from the main cabin. Kill them all! The fight was on. I came back to die on my feet, not live on my knees. Gunfire erupted across the compound like a thunderstorm trapped in wood walls. The sharp crack of Boone's rifle echoed from the tower, followed by screams and scattered footsteps in the dirt. Toby pushed Naya forward through the barn doors, 2 rescued girls clinging to her coat, wide-eyed and shaking. Get them to cover, he barked. Back to the fence, slow and low, Naya nodded, guiding the girls through the shattered stalls. Toby turned and fired a warning shot through the far window as another of Grady's men bolted from the bunkhouse, rifle in hand. The man dropped before he could fire a clean shot from Boone in the tower. Smoke now rose from the western watchpost Boone had set it alight. Fire crept across the roof, throwing sparks into the night like angry stars. The chaos was spreading. Toby slammed open the barn's side door, ducking low as bullets tore into the siding. He motioned for Naya and the girls. Now go! They sprinted into the open. A whistle pierced the air, sharp practiced. A signal. Grady's voice followed from the cabin porch, rising over the fire and gunshots. You think this is justice? You're just meat delaying the butcher. Toby didn't reply. He ushered the girls through the cut fence Boone had made the night before. Boone dropped down from the tower and met them on the other side, blood dripping from a graze on his shoulder, but still standing tall. That all of 'em? He asked, breathless. 3 girls, Naya said. No sign of more inside. Then it's just him, Toby said, glancing toward the cabin. A fresh volley of shots came from the porch. Not just him. 3 men remained positioned behind barrels and crates, protecting their boss like he was a king on a rotten throne. Boone raised his rifle again. We take 'em one at a time. Toby held out a hand. Wait. He looked at Naya. Her eyes were fixed on the porch. On Grady. He was standing now, blood seeping through the bandage at his side, hat gone hair wild. His pistol gleamed in one hand. He was grinning. Toby lowered his voice. This has to be yours. Naya shook her head. You kill him. You're faster. No, he said. He branded you. He broke you. You're the one who puts him in the dirt. Her hands trembled, but she nodded. She stepped into the open. Boone swore. What the hell is she doing? Toby raised his rifle just enough to cover her, but didn't move. Grady's laughter rolled across the yard. Look at you, limping like a dog. You should have died, quiet girl. That was your gift. Naya kept walking slow and deliberate. I came back to die on my feet, she called out, not live on my knees. Grady's face twisted. You think this is a fairy tale? You think you get to win just 'cause you want it bad enough? She stopped 10 paces away, revolver raised. No, she said. I get to win because you don't believe I can. Grady fired first, but the shot missed wild and wide. Naya didn't flinch. She fired once, twice. The first shot hit him in the thigh. The second sent her chest. Grady staggered, gun falling from his hand, mouth opening, as if to say something profound. But no words came. He collapsed onto the cabin steps, face first, blood pooling beneath him. For a long time, no one moved. No more shots. No more shouting. Just the sound of wind and fire. Boone exhaled slow. That it? Toby nodded. That's it. Naya stood over the body, staring down her shoulders, rising and falling with each breath. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just watched the last piece of him fade into the dirt. Behind her, the rescued girls clung to each other. Boone and Toby moved in to secure the cabin, checking the rooms, gathering supplies, making sure no one else was hiding. It was empty. Cold. Functional. A place of control, not comfort. In the back room, they found records, ledgers, lists, names. Proof. They burned it all. By morning, the smoke from the compound could be seen for miles. They didn't bother to hide it. They packed what they could and headed north. The girls rode double on the horses. Naya rode silent, her hands stained, and her heart strange, full and hollow all at once. At camp that night, Tobe sat next to her, offering the last of the coffee. You did what no one else would have dared, he said. She stared into the fire. I didn't do it for revenge. I know. I did it because no one ever came for me. I needed someone to. So I became her. Toby nodded slowly. That's who they'll remember. She didn't answer. But when the wind picked up, she didn't pull away from the warmth beside her. Behind them, the mountains stood quiet, as if they too were watching the last embers of a tyrant's fire turn to ash. The road don't end just because the monster's dead. The wind that carried them away from Eagle's Bend wasn't the same one that brought them there. It felt different, less like a warning, and more like a reminder. There were still mountains ahead, still cold, still long nights, and a trail that didn't forgive or forget. They traveled slow. Boone's shoulder was healing badly, stiff and swollen. Naya's arm stayed wrapped tight beneath Ruth's shawl, though the pain had dulled into a constant throb. The rescued girls, Ellie, Maris, and Joe, rode without complaint, but it was clear they were shaken shadows of the lives they should have had. Each day, Toby led them farther north, deeper into the pine country, where the land grew quiet and thick with fog. They didn't talk much, not about Grady, not about what came next. Just the simple things, where to make camp, how much food was left, what kind of tracks Boone spotted near the creek. But silence, even shared, didn't mean peace. One night, around a small fire tucked between rocks, Naya sat staring into the flames, hands curled around a tin mug she hadn't sipped from in an hour. Boone watched her from across the fire. You ain't slept since we left. I'm not tired, she replied without looking at him. You're hollow. Not the same thing. She didn't argue. just kept watching the fire crackle like maybe it had answers she hadn't found in Grady's death. Toby returned from patrol boots damp with creek water. "Trail's clear. We can push another mile tomorrow if the girls are up for it." Boone nodded. "They will be. Tougher than they look." Toby handed Naya a slice of dried venison. She didn't take it. "You've barely eaten," he said. Her voice was low. "I thought it would feel different." Toby sat beside her. Killing him, no. Living after. He didn't press her. Just let the silence hold for a while. Finally, he said, "The road don't end just because the monster's dead." She turned to look at him. "It bends," he said. "It dips. Sometimes it damn near disappears. But it don't end." Boone tossed a twig into the fire. "Truth is, folks like us don't ever really get to stop moving. We just keep choosing the next place, the next thing worth fighting for." "What if I don't know what that is yet?" she asked. Toby looked her in the eye. "Then you ride until you do." That night, for the first time in days, Naya slept. Not well, not long, but she slept. The next morning, Ellie wouldn't get on her horse. She stood by the tree line, arms crossed, chin trembling. "I want to go back," she said. "Back where Boone asked gently." "Home," the girl said. "To my mama." Naya knelt in front of her. "You remember where that is?" Ellie shook her head. "Not really." "That's all right," Naya said. "We'll help you remember. And if we can't, we'll help you make a new one." The girl stared at her for a long time, then nodded and climbed onto the saddle behind Boone. The trail narrowed by late afternoon. A light snow began to fall, not heavy, just a whisper from the sky. As they crossed a frozen creek, Maris turned and pointed to a distant rise. "What's that?" Boone squinted. "Smoke. From a chimney." Toby rode forward, scanning. "Cabin. One, maybe two people." "You think it's safe?" Naya asked. "We'll know soon enough." They approached slow, rifles ready, no sudden movements. A woman stepped out from the cabin door, elderly, wrapped in furs, her eyes sharp beneath a heavy hood. "You lost?" she asked. Toby tipped his hat. "Just passing through. Got cold mouths to feed and tired horses." She studied the group. The girls, the wounds, the silence. "You're not the first to come north bleeding," she said. "You won't be the last." She waved them in. The cabin was small but warm. Food was plain stew and bread, but real. The woman's name was Widow May. Her husband had died in the last border skirmish, and she'd been alone ever since. But she didn't seem lonely, just settled. She gave them a night to rest, and in the morning offered something none of them expected. "I've got 3 empty sheds," she said. "Used to be a trading post. You want to stay a while, fix them up, you're welcome to." Toby looked at Naya. Boone scratched his beard. "Hell, I could use a roof that ain't full of bullet holes." Naya looked around. The girls were laughing quietly in the snow, tossing bits of ice like it was treasure. No chains, no fences, just sky and cold air. "I think we should stay," she said. "Just for a little while." Toby smiled. "Then we stay." They got to work that day, splitting logs, patching roofs, boiling water. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't fast, but it was theirs. And every nail driven into wood, every pot cleaned, every fence repaired, it was something closer to healing. Not perfect, but honest. That night, Naya stood outside the cabin under a sky full of stars. Tob joined her. "You think they'll be okay?" she asked, nodding toward the girls. I think they've got a better shot now than they ever did. She turned toward him. And us, he didn't answer right away. Then he said, "The road don't end. But maybe it slows down here for a while." She smiled small, but real. And when the wind passed through the trees again, it didn't feel like a warning anymore. It felt like a beginning. Even peace can rot if you don't protect it. 3 weeks passed, like smoke quiet, slow, and hard-earned. The sheds had become homes. The girls laughed more now. Ellie fed chickens that didn't belong to her. Maris asked Widow May questions about every herb in the garden, and Jo spent her mornings sketching elk bones with charcoal and sharp-focused eyes. Their silences were shorter, their footsteps lighter. Toby finished the last section of fence along the south ridge. Boone, ever the mountain hound, taught the girls how to trap and skin rabbits without flinching. Naya planted roots not in the dirt, but in her daily rhythm, boiling water, sharpening blades, mending clothes. They were breathing again. But peace has its price. It came one morning as snow melted early, and muddy ruts ran through the path down to the creek. Toby spotted hoofprints fresh deep and not theirs, too heavy for a single rider. He followed them quiet and low to the edge of the tree line. A stranger in a gray coat and cavalry boots stood near the frozen stream, smoking a thin cigar. Not local, not friendly. Toby returned alone and said only 2 words, companies close. By noon, the rider appeared on the cabin path, hands raised. Boone sat on the porch with a shotgun across his lap, not smiling. "You lost, stranger." "Not exactly," the man said. "Looking for someone." Toby and Naya stepped out. The man's eyes flicked to her, pausing a beat too long. He tipped his hat. "You go by Naya now, or the name Grady had in his books." The name struck like a hammer, something from another life spoken out loud in clean air. "Depends who's asking," Toby said, stepping forward. "U.S. Marshal Lennox," he replied. "We heard about the Eagles Bend fire. Took a while, but the word made it south." "You come to arrest us?" Boone asked, already bored. "Not quite," Lennox said. "We've had eyes on Grady for years. Couldn't get close. But now he's dead, folks are talking. His men, his buyers. You stirred up something bigger than you know." Naya folded her arms. "So what do you want?" "We want your story," Lennox said. "Names, places, what you saw, what you did. And we want you to testify." Toby stiffened. "Testify to what?" "To everything the marshal said. You pulled a string and now we're seeing how far the rot goes. There's a network of men like Grady. Some wear badges, some sit in courtrooms. But they're all tangled in this." Boone let out a dry laugh. "And you think a few orphans and outlaws will bring 'em down?" "We think the truth might." Lennox replied, "If it's loud enough." He handed Naya a sealed envelope. "Court dates in 3 months. Territory capital. We'll escort you when it's time." Then he turned, mounted his horse, and rode off the way he came. Silence returned, but it wasn't the same kind. Naya opened the envelope later after the others had gone quiet. Her hands trembled again, not from fear, but from the weight of being seen, finally, officially. "I should go," she said that night by the fire. "I should stand up there and say what I know." Toby nodded slowly. "You don't owe them anything." "But I owe the girls. And whoever's next." Boone spit into the fire. "You think that court's gonna protect you? You stand up there, you put a mark on your back bigger than Grady ever did." "I know," she said. "But this time I get to choose it." The following days were tight with tension. Word spread to nearby settlers. Some were curious. Some were wary. A few were angry. Rumors began that Naya had killed a lawman, that she'd burned a town, that she was no hero, just another outlaw in a woman's coat. Boone got into a fight at the trading post, came back with a split lip and a grin. They don't like what they don't understand. One night someone nailed a dead fox to their gate. The next smoke rose from Widow May's shed. Arson. Put out quick but enough to raise alarm. Toby paced the perimeter with a rifle every night. It was always going to come back, he said. The truth has weight. Naya didn't argue. She just trained harder, sharpened her aim, helped the girls learn how to disappear into trees, taught them how to lie with their faces calm. Even peace can rot if you don't protect it, she told them. Boone watched her with something like pride. You sound like you've been living out here your whole life. I've only started, she said. The date on the envelope got closer. Snow melted into slush. Roads opened again. Riders passed more frequently. Every one of them brought a little more noise to the edges of their quiet. Lennox returned with 2 deputies and a wagon. He knocked, once nodded, and said, "Time to go." The girls hugged Naya tight, but didn't cry. Boone packed her coat with ammunition she'd never asked for. Toby rode with her as far as the county line. No words, just hoofbeats and pine shadows. At the ridge, she stopped. This might get ugly, she said. Toby adjusted his reins. You'll handle it. She smiled, tired and fierce. You staying? For now, he said. Someone's got to keep the foxes off the fence. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't need to. She rode on with the marshals, toward the place where her story would be laid bare, toward a reckoning the law had avoided for far too long. The courtroom wasn't what Naya expected. It wasn't cold marble and polished oak. It was dusty floorboards, wooden benches, and a judge who looked like he'd seen too many winters and not enough justice. The Territorial Hall of Record, they called it, but it felt like a barn dressed up in borrowed law. Still, it was packed. Reporters, settlers, deputies with twitchy fingers, women who stared at her like they already knew her pain, and men, some slick in suits, others thick with suspicion, who leaned forward like wolves sniffing weakness. She didn't wear black. She wore the same coat Boone had patched, the same boots that had walked her out of hell, and around her neck a simple leather strap where Ruth's stone still hung. Marshal Lennox stood beside her, papers in hand. His deputies flanked the doorway like sentries, but it was clear to her, if this room turned, they'd be overwhelmed. She wasn't safe here. Not really. Not yet. The judge called her name. Naya Quinn, please approach. She stepped forward, each footstep landing like a drumbeat in the hush. They swore her in, asked her to state her name. She did. Then the questions came. Some were simple dates, locations, names. She gave them her voice, even eyes never dropping. Some were harder. What had she seen? What had been done to her? To the others, she told the truth. She told of chains and barns, of dark corners, and bought judges, of screams muffled by riverbanks, and the price of a girl's life scribbled in a ledger like cattle weight. She said the name Grady with no tremble. She said the names of men who paid him without flinching. She did not apologize. One attorney objected to her tone. The judge overruled it. The longer she spoke, the more the room changed. Some leaned closer. Some looked away. One woman cried into her gloves. One man got up and left, not returning. But she didn't stop. Because if she stopped, they'd think it wasn't as bad as it had been. And it was. By the time she finished, her throat was raw, and the sky outside had darkened into the soft gray of late winter dusk. The judge thanked her, and then silence. The court adjourned for deliberation. Lennox offered to take her to a hotel. She declined. She walked out alone into the evening boots, crunching over old snow and grit. The town smelled of horses and ash. The saloon lights blinked like sleepy eyes. She found a bench at the edge of the main street and sat down. That was when the girl approached. 15, maybe 16. Ragged clothes, dirt on her cheek. Eyes too old for her face. "Are you the one who shot Grady?" Naya blinked. "Yes." The girl nodded like that was enough, like it mattered more than anything else she'd said. "My sister was taken 3 years ago. We never found her." Naya said nothing. There were no good words. The girl held something out, an old photograph worn soft with age. "Just, if you ever see her." Naya took it gently. "I will." The girl turned and vanished into the town fog, leaving only the quiet weight of memory. Inside the courthouse, the jury returned. It was swift. Too swift, some might have said. But not to Naya. She knew when people finally saw what they'd refused to look at for years, it either broke them open or locked them up tighter. This jury had broken open. The judge read the verdict aloud. Several names indicted. Warrants issued. Orders signed to shut down the remaining outposts still operating under false permits. Then the judge turned to Naya. "Miss Quinn, this court acknowledges your role in the exposure of a criminal network and your willingness to testify under personal risk. You are hereby released from any charges related to the events at Eagle's Bend." Released. The word didn't feel like freedom. It felt like exhale. Lennox drove her in a buckboard to the edge of the foothills. From there, she rode north alone. The journey back took longer. Not because of the trail, but because of what she carried now. Every mile was a name she'd spoken under oath. Every campfire was a girl who didn't make it out. Every night's wind sounded like the echo of chains falling. But still, she rode. When she finally returned to Widow May's homestead, the snow had retreated into patches. Grass pushed up through the thaw. Birds had returned to the eaves. Toby was splitting wood. He didn't smile when he saw her. He just stopped, leaned on the axe, and nodded. "You came back," he said. She stepped off the horse, sore and silent. "I said I would." Boone limped out from the side shed, apron stained with grease. "Damn court couldn't hang you, huh?" She smirked. Not for lack of trying. The girls ran to her. Taller now, louder. Joe handed her a notebook filled with drawings, detailed sketches of Grady's compound, the courtroom, even her testimony. "You remembered it all?" Naya asked. Joe nodded. "You said we shouldn't forget." That night they built a bigger fire. Not for warmth. For marking. The beginning of something else. A cabin was raised for Naya by the end of spring. She didn't ask for it. Toby just built it. Boone helped with the roof, complaining the whole time. In the weeks that followed, other folks came. Some bringing supplies. Some just to sit and listen. A few brought names, people they suspected, girls who had vanished. It became a place of quiet power. Not a refuge. A reminder. A living scar stitched with new thread. One evening, Naya stood at the ridge overlooking the Pine Valley below. The wind brushed her cheeks colder than it should have been for May. Toby joined her. "You thinking of leaving again?" he asked. She shook her head. "No," she said. "This time I want to stay." He didn't say anything, just looked out at the same valley. Below them, the girls were planting something in the dirt, rows and rows of seeds. Not flowers, not grain, saplings, trees meant to stay. Naya exhaled. "We survived," she whispered. Toby nodded. "And now we live."